Hey everyone, Ty Sleep Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review. We gotta talk about some music, makes me excited! The new Panopticon record, Roads to the North. These guys are a Kentucky metal band, and do not ask me why I'm reviewing so much metal. I'm reviewing it because it's good. And I'm specifically reviewing this project because I think it's one of the most interesting, long-running, best-kept secrets in the Kentucky music scene. The band is actually sole member Austin Lunn, who is an incredible multi-instrumentalist, not only bringing the foundation of metal to the table with guitars and drums and vocals, but also bringing woodwinds and strings and a plethora of other instrumentation, a pretty ambitious undertaking. However, when I listened to the project's last full-length LP, Kentucky, what I understand to be a bit of a concept album about Kentucky's coal mining history, I reacted to it a little negatively because I think I heard the second track off of this thing, and right at the start there was a terribly incorporated either tin whistle or recorder at the very start of the song that sounded awful. Imagine that soaring over these blast beats and harsh guitars. It was not a pretty sight. However, I still walked away from this record being kind of enamored with the aesthetic of the band, bringing black metal together with folk music. Not anything entirely new, but it is something that some of my favorite black metal bands do, like Ulver and Agalloch. However, in Austin Lunn's neck of the woods, folk music is something totally different than it is to Ulver. Folk music is American folk music. It is bluegrass. So occasionally on these tracks you have fiddle solos, you have banjo, and it's actually pretty nice. The folk instrumentation, the acoustic instrumentation on this record at times make it a pretty easy listen, even for people who aren't really fans of metal music. But throughout a lot of the black metal moments on this record, there's a really strong element of melody. The harshness on these songs doesn't really come without an element of sweetness. There are tracks on this record that are pure bluegrass, like the first song in this 3-song series called The Long Road. It's nothing but plucked guitars and banjos in every direction, a fiery fiddle solo. It's a really speedy, dynamic, edge of your seat kind of track, even though it's entirely acoustic. The ending of the song isn't the best in the world because it seems to transition right into one of the harshest, most pummeling intros on the entire record. And even though I do like these two styles, these two genres that are being represented here, and I think they're being represented well, there is a serious shift in tone from the end of this track to the beginning of the next track. And then there's the song Norwegian Nights, which is kind of a very downtrodden, sad, despair-filled singer-songwriter track with just fiddles and guitars that are overcome with misery and are playing very slow, and the vocals are maybe my least favorite thing about the track. They're just so cold, they're just so lifeless. I'm sure it was intentional to an extent, but even though these vocals rub me the wrong way a little bit, I still see this as a very essential track in the track listing. It's a really nice change of pace, a nice piece of counterpoint from the harder and heavier songs on this record, which are essentially the crux of the album. These epic, twisted, adventurous black metal tracks that reach up to 9-12 minutes, have tons of extra instrumentation woven into them. The first track kicks off with a flurry of drums and guitars and all these bleeding fiddles, like bleeding like a sheep. Wah, wah, wah. I actually find that the fiddles bring another piece of chaotic beauty to the chaotic beauty I typically find in black metal that I think is great. There's also a really nice, chunky, heavy, thematic riff that breaks up these more melodic fiddle-back parts. And there's some fiery guitar solos on this song too, and throughout the entire record as well. Just really fast, sweet-picking, really great sense of melody. And all of this stuff, this incredibly riveting stuff, happens in only the first 4 minutes of the song. There's 5 more minutes. Every single track on this LP, no matter how long it is incredibly multifaceted, dynamic, always progressing, always changing, like the track The Long Road Part 2, which toward the end of the song, it progresses into this really chill, laid-back, subtle, progressive rock passage with this great chord progression. The rhythm of this part just feels so off-kilter, and yet it's just so relaxed. And as the song continues, it gets a bit of a post-rock vibe with these ethereal soaring guitars entering the picture. And this post-rock feel continues on to the intro of the next track. It's just so nice to have this long span of beautiful rock instrumentation to sort of complement the harsher parts on this record. Because even though they are great and I do like them, they are so unrelenting. Partially because the production is so rough. Not so rough that it's like Dark Throne Transylvanian hunger level, but the drums, the guitars, the strings, it can all feel a little claustrophobic, and a lot of the time the vocals are kind of buried. However, the recording limitations on this record don't really stop Panopticon from incorporating just some really grim or beautiful subtleties into these songs. Like at the end of The Long Road 3, where we get this black metal style vocal and death metal style vocal double up. The second track off of this LP starts with a really beautiful, gorgeous acoustic interlude, which progresses into this anthemic, marching black metal hymnal that I think is actually really invigorating and kind of uplifting. The song gives off this immense vibe of glory and power. And then there's the last track on the LP, which is maybe the most cinematic and climactic on the entire record. I mean, some illustrious instrumentation on this thing. Strings, bells. It's like some Lord of the Rings level shit. This moment in the song really could have legitimately been placed into a really huge and expensive soundtrack and would have sounded great. But this is just one smidge in the song. I mean, the rest of the track is good as well, but this is just a serious highlight. I love black metal that can bring a sense of magnificence to the table. And this album definitely does that. This album feels more victorious than the bloodiest and most righteous battle ever fought. There's so much going for it that harkens back to the black metal tradition, but the fact that this album is so influenced by American folk music and bluegrass just gives it a different melodic sense. Plus you have so much variety on this record, and it all comes together so well for the most part. It is a little long-winded, and there are a couple tracks that I felt like paled in comparison to others, like In Silence, which I think is maybe the most disjointed song on the entire LP, but I was still pretty wowed and amazed by the material that was put in front of me on this LP. I'm feeling a strong 8 to a like 9 on this thing. Transition, if you've given this record a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Panopticon, forever.